Hey everyone, I'm Adam Tanaka with Cave House Supply, and welcome to our video series, At the Table, where we have conversations with experts, educators, parents and caregivers, and even kiddos themselves about strategies that actually work for families in the home. This is about empowering kids and supporting the people who love them, you. I started this because families are constantly looking for practical ways to help their kids thrive, while also taking care of themselves. And honestly, that balance isn't always easy to find. In fact, it can feel almost debilitating. I'm not a parent, I want to make that clear. But I was a kid once, and I remember what I needed. But I also remember the lack of support that my parents had when they needed guidance the most. I think it's so easy to forget that we not only need to provide a safe space for our kids, but as adults, we need that safe space as well. If you already know about Cave House Supply, then you know that we're all about bringing optimism and adventure into family life, and we do that by empowering kids with confidence and creativity while supporting families. And if you're new here, welcome. I'd love for you to check us out at cavehousasupply.com, and if you're up for it, join in on the adventure. Now let's dig into the conversation at the table. Thank you for joining us at the Table. I'm Adam Tanaka with Cave House Supply, and this is super exciting for me. Dr. Andrea Mata is joining us. Some refer to her as Dr. Dre. I don't know. As her LinkedIn puts it, and I freaking love this, is that she's throat punching the Gen Z mental health crisis. She's a keynote speaker, workshop facilitator. She's a clinical psychologist, been in practice full-time for 4 years, and she's the author of the #2 parenting book, Practical Tips for the Pooped Out Parent. That book is right behind her there, to her left, our right. I have a bookmark. She sent me a bookmark. It is wonderful. Pick up a copy. I'll put all the links in the description after. There it is. There it is. Some TP. Isn't that brilliant? That's beautiful. And so I'll have all the links in the description of how to buy the book, get in touch with Dr. Dre, all the things here. So thank you so much for joining me on this pretty new video series for Cave House Supply.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on.
Yes. So we through our newsletter, as it's growing, we've had a lot of parents reach out and give me specific topics that they want to hear, because we have a section in our newsletter called Supporting Families. I sent out a forum, was like, what do you guys want to hear? And they, as parents do not hesitate. Hey, we'd love to hear this. And one of the things that kept popping up was all about diving into anxious kiddos. And of course, I feel that to my core. I think we all do to some degree. And so today we're diving into helping kids who have a propensity towards anxiety, those kids who immediately go to scary places in their minds, no matter the circumstances. So without further ado, I'm ready to dive in to some questions that I had. This first one here is going to be somewhat of a two-parter. How can parents tell the difference between normal childhood worries and anxiety that needs more intentional support?
Okay. So that first part, right? So this is one of the biggest things that I focus in on as a clinical child psychologist is like, okay, everyone has anxiety. Everyone experiences anxiety. And if anyone ever tells you that they've never experienced like nervousness or worry or anxiety, it's malarkey. They're lying to you, because everybody experiences anxiety. And so like, that's a great question, Adam. Like, how do we differentiate this line between normal behavior and abnormal behavior if anxiety is normal for everybody, at least some form of anxiety? The big thing that I'm looking at as a clinical child psychologist, is it getting in the way of their academics? Have they seen a significant drop in their academic performance? Were they a B student before and now they're like struggling to, earn D's or something like that? Or they're not getting homework done as well? if we're talking anxious kids, they're spending probably an exorbitant amount of time on it compared to anyone else their age. They want to make sure that everything's correct and everything's perfect and there's no mistakes. So maybe that's what it looks like, is that they're spending a lot more time on homework than they usually are. They could be avoiding situations, they could be avoiding school situations, they could be avoiding homework. The other thing that we want to look at is like social. So if it's getting in the way of them living the kind of social life that they want to live, like they're worried all of the time about their what they're saying and how they said something and what their friends are thinking and all of those kind of things. If it's getting in the way of their daily living, that's definitely a key red flag for this behavior has now moved from like normal anxiety over to like abnormal anxiety. So that's the first tip I would give.
Mm. See, because when you say that, I think about like in elementary school for me. I was always excited about going to school.
Mhm,
Grades were great for elementary school, but it was 3rd grade. It was truly like 3rd grade where you could tell, like, I would start waking up with stomach aches and, like, dread,
mhm,
and come to to find out, like, you trace that back, it was this reason was specific teacher who was just
mhm.
mean,
Yeah,
and I'm left-handed, and she would always take the pencil and put it in my right hand and say, "We're right-handed here," and it was one of those things where it was just like so that sparked the whole, like, my grades started dropping, and then
mhm.
I didn't wanna go to school, and then this, and so hearing you say that, it's like, yes, that's where it kinda just started clicking for me. Are there warning signs that indicate a child's anxiety has moved beyond what parents can support at home?
One of the biggest things, and I talk about it all the time in the number 2 parenting book, like how do we raise kids by setting high expectations within the context of the warm and fuzzies. This is how we're going to probably reduce the amount of anxiety that our kids are going to experience. Because when we start to get into other parenting styles, that's when we start to see kids having more anxiety. And so I think the big thing, like warning signs, again, is that getting in the way of them living the life that they want to live. Like if they've had a significant shift, those are all warning signs that I would look out for. They're not willing to go to school anymore. They're not paying attention as well. Those would all they're not eating as much. They're having like kind of those stomach aches that you were talking about, or any other kind of like body kind of issues going on. Those would all be warning signs to kind of maybe dive down a little bit as a parent to ask those questions, reach out to them, open up that line of communication, see if they're doing, what's going on. And then maybe you can kind of address it your like kind of figure out problem solve it your own way. But then really if it gets too far down and you're like, this is outside of my scope as a parent, then by all means reach out to a professional and they'll let you know like, okay, yeah, like this can be taken care of in 2 sessions, or hey, this could be taken care of in like 8 sessions, no worries.
My parents not having the support at all, and so how
Mhm.
they didn't know how to support me, so it was truly like me just kinda navigating that alone as that 3rd grader and trying to
Yeah.
figure it out as I went, and luckily, I'd find friends who were just kind of fun, and so I could, like, lean on them for that support. When a child shares a dark or scary thought, what's the most helpful way for parents to respond in that moment?
So I think as a parent, I remember back to a client I had, and we knew that she was kind of going into that dark place of suicide. She was a teenager. And I remember her mom called me because her mom was like, Andrea, we need to get in like immediately. She just came in and she, had gone to a place where she could, if she wanted to, hurt herself or like, maybe even worse, like taking her life. And I was like, "Okay, let's get her in, like, as soon as possible." The thing is, if you hear that from your teen, or if you hear that they're, like, self-harming, or you hear, like, other scary thoughts, even though it's going to be probably nearly impossible, the biggest thing is to stay cool, calm, and collected, and just be like, "Okay, Tell me more about that, and, like, try to really go back to, like, old school stuff and, like, engage active listening where it's like you're asking them, "Okay, tell me more about that. Okay, here," and then you're asking them questions like, "Okay, what is that?" And then, like, "How is that?" or "Who is that?" And really kind of, like, being inquisitive without passing judgment and without freaking out, because if you freak out, then they might start to feel shame, which we don't want them to feel. And then they might not bring you this information to you in the future, or even worse, kind of more severe problems, scary thoughts in the future. Or they're they're just going to continue to do it because now they've gotten attention, maybe they don't get enough attention or something like that, and then they're gonna kinda start engaging in attention seeking. So these are 3 ways that we don't want it to go, and so I think the biggest thing is to stay cool, calm, and collected, and really dive in and use your active listening skills to find out more information about it, and be inquisitive and non-judgmental.
Cool, calm, collected.
Mhm,
Do it. So that makes me think about a buddy of mine. Literally a few weeks ago, he was like, "You know what? I think I'm gonna get a tattoo on my wrist so that I can look down and it'll remind me every day. Curiosity over judgment." I feel like this applies. That's it.
mhm.
Like 100%. It's just keep feeding that. So, what are some practical techniques parents can teach kids to interrupt that spiral of catastrophic thinking?
Mhm. So my number one phrase to clients is, "What's the worst thing that can happen?" And so, like, a lot of the time when we're having that catastrophic thinking, that spiral thinking, like, we think this big, awful thing is gonna happen. I remember when I was on internship at Boys Town, and one of my colleagues, keep in mind, he's like a graduate student, he's about to be a psychologist. He comes over and he looks at me and he's like, "Dre." I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" He's like, "My dissertation advisor didn't give me feedback yet, and it's been, like, weeks." And I was like, "Okay, like, what does that mean?" And he's like, "Well, it means, like, I'm not gonna defend my dissertation, so I'm not gonna get a job, and then I'm not gonna be able to support my wife and my newborn baby, and I'm not gonna make any money, and we're gonna be homeless, and we're gonna be living under a bridge as trolls." And I was like, "Whoa. Whoa." So you went from, like, your dissertation advisor, who is notorious for not getting back to you very quickly, to, like, you guys are gonna be trolls living under a bridge, and your oh, that was the other thing. His baby is going to die, and I was like, "Whoa, buddy." I'm like, "We've gone from here to, like, here. This is not okay." And I was like, and so then I got a sense without even asking him, "What's the worst thing that could happen?" To him, the worst thing that could have happened was, like, this just spiral. And so, like, a lot of the time, I ask my clients, I'm like, "What's the worst thing that can happen?" And then they give me an answer, a much more realistic answer than, their baby dies. And then I say, "Okay, then tell me what's the likelihood that that's going to happen? And show me evidence, give me data." So a lot of the times with, like, college students, right? They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna fail this test." And they're like, "And then I'm gonna fail the whole class because I'm not gonna be able to pass any of the tests." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, so then I asked them, I'm like, "Okay, what's the likelihood that this bad thing that you think is going to happen, or the anxiety," that's another big thing, that the anxiety is telling you is going to happen. What's the likelihood that it's going to happen?" And I'm like, "When's the last time you failed a test?" And they're like, "Never." And I was like, "Ah." So if you've
Boom.
never failed a test, then what's the likelihood that you're gonna fail this test? And they're like, "Oh," and usually that kind of turns off that worry warts just spiral, is asking them, "Okay, give me some data." Because what's going on is that they're in emotional mind, and what we need to do is we need to bring them over to logical mind. We need to throw data at them. So you're literally just throwing data at them and statistics and, like, when was the last time it happened? What are the odds? What's the likelihood? Then once you kind of decipher, okay, is it unlikely to happen? Then you ask them the next question. Well, if it's unlikely to happen, then why are we wasting our time, our energy, our resources on something that's not likely to happen? Let's go do something that's completely within our control, that's going to prevent that thing that we think is going to happen from actually happening, that's within our control. Now, on the other side of that tree branch that we kind of say it's likely to happen, right? Okay, I get it. So you failed the last 3 tests. Okay, now we have some reasons for concerns. Well, if it's likely to happen, the next question I ask them, okay, well, then what resources do you possess that will help you navigate if that did happen? Do you have family? Do you have finances? Do you have friends? Do you have teachers? Do you have mentors? What are those resources that you possess that can get you through that really terrible thing happening?
Is it weird that even at 42 years old, I'm just now learning the feelings and logical thing?
Mm,
It's
mhm,
like I can do that. Like I'm listening to your friend go from, you know, not getting back to him to my baby
mhm.
dying, and I'm like, I can totally relate to that, like
Yeah.
100%. Uh, so I'm being that is like truth. What daily practices or routines can families implement to help anxious children feel more secure and grounded?
So, one of the big things that I focus in on, I talk about the fundamentals, what I call the fundamentals of mental health. And so they are rejuvenation, movement, food and water, connection, and sleep. So those are the 5 things that I talk with a lot to with my clients. I'm like, "Okay, which of these 5 things are kind of out of whack? And if we kind of just stabilize on these 5, or if we focus on these 5, it's going to keep anxiety at bay." And so, like, is the child getting enough sleep? So a lot of kids need at least 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night. So if they're, anxious, are they getting enough sleep? Is there a way that we can get them more sleep? So that's one big thing. And quality sleep too. So, like, are they sleeping by themselves? Are they able to put themselves to sleep by themselves every night? And then maybe you're waking them up, or maybe they're waking themselves up, or maybe they're using like an okay to wake clock and or alarm clock, something like that. The rejuvenation piece is probably the one that needs the most explanation is, are they doing something every day that brings them joy? Are they rejuvenating their kind of what I say, like, their gas tank, so that or their battery, whatever phrase you wanna use, but are they rejuvenating? So, like, my rejuvenation is, like, walking or swimming or reading or something along those lines that's going to, like, pour into me so that I can continue to be the best version of myself. Connection. Do they feel connected with other people, or are they experiencing high levels of loneliness? That's a big thing. Food and water. Are they drinking enough water? So many of our children aren't drinking enough water, and there's guidelines out there. Usually, I say for adults, it's half your body weight in ounces every day. And then food. Are they eating protein? Are they getting fruits and vegetables? Food that we know, or are they and do they have limited processed foods like sugary foods and those kind of things? Because that leads to anxiety, or like those dyes that lots of people are talking about currently. And then movement. Are they moving their bodies every day in whatever form of movement they want? Are they walking? Are they running? Are they playing football? Are they playing, doing ballet? Are they doing, cardio drumming? Whatever their movement of choice is, are they doing it? And so I think that's something that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, and any parent across the nation can start implementing with their kids and for themselves too.
I've never heard someone talk about that breakdown that way, and it covers everything. I
Mhm.
mean, I talk to parents and educators a lot,
Mhm.
and they're always talking about parts of these things, but being able to hear it this way and then break it down into those core pieces and
Mhm.
putting that together, like, that's just kind of like a puzzle piece that might have been missing somewhere. Of course, I need to make sure they're moving their bodies,
Mhm.
and not sitting there just, like, kinda gaming, all the time
Exactly.
or
Make
whatever.
It's interesting, Adam, that you brought up the gaming piece, right? Because, like, our bodies are not necessarily like, our fight, flight, and freeze response is not able to really differentiate whether or not our bodies are in danger in reality or, like, a virtual reality. So, like, when the kids are playing video games, your kids' fight, flight, or freeze may be activated a lot more than you actually think it is because they're playing,
Mm,
video games.
wow. Man. That can get heavy. Would get a little
It
heavy.
can.
So how can parents take care of their own emotional well-being when supporting a child who struggles with persistent anxiety and dark thoughts?
Mhm. So I think a big thing is 5.5 million Americans every year experiences parental burnout. Their responsibilities are significantly higher than their resources, and this causes parental burnout. And no one wants to live like that, and no one should live like that. And so one of the big things that I talk about, again, going back to the fundamentals of mental health, that's just not just for kids, it's for all adults. The other thing that I haven't really incorporated into the fundamentals of mental health is like getting outside. So I might put that into like movement, like get outside, do movement outside, be in nature. Those are going to be things that are going to be great. Reflect on yourself and see, do you have enough gas in your tank to meet the emotional needs of your child? Now, no parent is going to listen to this and be like, I don't care how much gas I have into my tank. If my child needs me, I'm going to get that. But the thing is, we need to be gaining more. We need to be replenishing our gas tanks so that we can be the best parent. Do you want your kid to have, 67% of you all of the time? Or do you want to maybe take a weekend away, which I advocate for in the number two parenting book? I call them momcations or dadcations, where you take, I suggest 48 hours where you are free of all responsibilities and you get to do and eat whatever you want, and you get to sleep whenever you want. And just till every year I suggest people do it. My husband's actually just left for his like an hour ago
I was
with
gonna
his
say you
best.
practice that.
So I took mine a few weeks ago. I went to our place on the lake and it was just me. I got there, I went to like a bar for some food. I met this really adorable woman named Susan, and her and I chatted. And then I think Saturday I literally laid on the couch and like binged watched. What did I binge watch? Oh, The Bear. The show from
Oh, I heard
FX, The
about that, yeah.
Bear. So
Yeah.
I watched every single episode and I have no guilt about it whatsoever. I got to
Yes.
eat what I wanted. And then on Sunday, I actually took our boat out all by myself, which was a little bit scary. But then I
Wow.
took out our boat and I was just able to like, anchor down. And then I was able to read for like an hour. And it was just like, oh my goodness. Like water. I love water and books and all of the things. And so I advocate for every single parent to
Wow.
48 hours is what I usually typically advocate for. But if you can't do 48 hours, I get it. At least 24 hours.
How did you feel when you got back?
Like, I could take on anything. Like, I remember, like, I was supposed to take my young because I do monthly dates with each of every month, I take one of my kids out on a date, and so it was her date, but I felt ready and raring to go and take her out, and I was to be able to 100% be able to engage with her, and, "Sure, you wanna do that? Sure, let's go do that, no worry." Like, no worries again. But yeah, like, we were able to like, I'm able to, like, pour into them because me, myself, my gas tank is full.
God, yes.
Mhm.
Wow. It's part of the strategy. It's not you're not s th that is wonderful. Um, what role does validation play when a child's fears seem irrational to the adult, but they feel completely real to the kid?
So I think this is a big thing, and this is a part of very big debate in our nation right now is this idea of gentle parenting versus FAFO parenting versus what I advocate for, which is authoritative parenting. And so I think for what's been going on for the last 20 years is that we've moved more to this gentle parenting where parents are validating their child's emotions all of the time. And I think and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the issue is when you validate your child's emotions, but then you don't pair that with an expectation of them. Let me explain. So Emotions, when I always talk about the psychology triangle with my clients. And so it's your thoughts, it's your feelings, and your behaviors. And they're all interconnected. They all fuel each other. Your thoughts impact your feelings and your feelings impact your thoughts and your behaviors impact your thoughts and your feelings. But here's the thing, there's only one of those three things that we have absolutely no control over. And that one is feelings. You have no control over your feelings. That's why I always laugh when people say, like, "Oh, no worries," even though I say it all the time. I always talk to when I'm working with an anxious client. I'm like, "How many people have like told you like, oh, don't worry about that?" And you're like, "Oh, I wish I could have just thought about that." No, it doesn't work that way because we have no control over our feelings, but we do have control over our thoughts and we have control over our behaviors. And so one of the things I say is, okay, let's validate that child's behavior. I understand that you are feeling scared, but we're still going to do this behavior. So there's times where like my son, he's out of my 3 kids, he's the most conscientious. He's kind of the perfectionist in the group, and he's like I remember we were trying to teach our kids how to water ski, and he was like, "Oh, I don't wanna do it." And I was like, "Bud, just you put the water skis on." He's like, "But I'm scared." And I'm like, "But we can do things even though we are scared. I understand you are scared. All we gotta do is I'm gonna be right there with you the whole time. You're gonna put the skis on, and then you're gonna sit in the water for a little bit, and then you're gonna be done." And so I think that's a big thing is to validate their emotions. I hear that you are scared. I hear that you are nervous. I hear that you are worried, but you can still do it. I still believe in you. Let's figure out what are these baby steps that we can get them so that they're not just stuck in the anxiety and the nervousness and the worry. Because here's the thing about anxiety, if it can get you stuck, it's going to keep you stuck. I usually describe anxiety as like a 500-pound gorilla that like just is you're just giving a piggyback ride to your anxiety, right? And every time that you don't do anything about your anxiety, anytime that you don't challenge your anxiety, you're just throwing a bunch of bananas back at that gorilla, and that gorilla is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And but here's the thing, every time that you go a little bit and lean a little bit into fighting against your anxiety, you don't feed that gorilla, and then the gorilla gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually it'll be like this size, kind of like on your shoulder, and you can just kind of, swat it away.
I love that visual. Oh my gosh. I might have to animate that for this episode specifically. No, that's incredible. I love that visual, and
Mhm.
having that gives like substance too, and you can visualize yourself just kind of like shh, be quiet.
You're not.
But
Because here's the thing, the other thing that most people don't realize is that anxiety lies all of the time. It tells you that this thing is scary, but really it's not scary. It's just but the anxiety wants you to believe that it is scary.
yeah, your story about the skis and your son. I have a buddy, a dear friend who is also a neighbor. He has
Mhm.
3 kids now. He just had a baby, but his oldest, I think he's about 11.
Mhm.
And these kids are just some of the most incredible, well-behaved, amazing kids. And they wanna come over and play Frisbee with Mr. Adam, and I'm like, "Let's do this. Let's play hacky sack, Frisbee, whatever you want."
Mhm.
But his oldest your story reminded me they were at a water park the other day. He was telling me the story. They were at a water park the other day, and his son feels the same way. "I don't
Mhm.
wanna go down the slide. I'm scared." And he goes and he was so they had a talk right there at the top of the water slide about
Mhm.
courage,
Yeah.
and his son felt empowered and was
Mhm.
like, "Let's do this," and
Yeah.
did it and was like, "That was the most fun ever." And
Mhm.
so when you were
Right.
saying that, I was just like, "Man, I'm feeling like I'm Kid Adam again hearing an adult say it." So it's like, "Let's do this," and I'm
Mhm.
feeling empowered. So I love that. I love that so much. There was a second part to this, and I think you answered it, but if you wanted to throw in some more
Yeah.
nuggets or anything like
Mhm.
that, but how do we help children build resilience without dismissing their very, very real fears?
I think one of the big things is we don't blow emotions out of proportion. and we don't want to focus on their emotions. We want to encourage them and tell them, like, hey, even though you are blank, you are scared, you are nervous, you're worried, you're anxious, you can still do things. Like the vast majority of public speakers, right? Just because you are feeling a certain kind of way doesn't mean you can't do those things. And so I think it's like helping your child, and I call it scaffolding, give them just enough support that they can go and face that fear, that they can go and they can conquer, they can do that thing that they're anxious about. And really kind of pouring into them that way is like, no, I believe that you are able to do this. Like, for instance, right now, my son, he's in tackle football and he is really, really fast. So he's like a safety and he's had trouble tackling because he's like, I need to tackle these. And he's tall, but he's scrawny, right? He'll gain weight later on. But some of these other kids are much, much bigger than him. And so I looked at him the other night and because if he wants to play, that's the other thing. He wants to play. And I'm like, okay, so you want to play. So let's figure out. So he started lifting with his father, like my husband. So them are like now they're like going and they're like lifting out in, our garage, a few times a week. And then the other thing, I'm like tackling like the mental side with him. And I looked at him about a week ago and I was like, hey, you're a tackling machine. And he's like, what? And I'm like, you're a tackling machine. And he's like, I'm like, what are you? And then so we were like goofing and I'm like tickling him. I'm like, what are you? He's like, I'm a tackling machine. And so now it's
Oh,
become this thing. Like he was leaving for football practice yesterday. And I looked at him like, hey, bud, what are you? He's like, a tackling machine. So like just
oh,
getting
that's
him this view,
awesome.
like this positive affirmation of this is what he wants to be and so let's manifest it. Let's say it like let's say that we're already doing it. Let's say it multiple times a day. I'm a tackling machine. And then eventually he will be a tackling machine. And so my husband said, he's
Yes.
like, yeah, he was closer to tackling the other day. So he's got a football game tomorrow. So I'll touch back with you, Adam, and see whether or not
Right.
well, first of all, did he get the opportunity to tackle? And did he tackle?
Was he a tackling machine? I love that. So he's gonna be on the field, eyes forward, and just being like, "I'm a tackling machine. I'm a tackling,"
Exactly.
and then boom, you know?
And then
Well,
he's gonna get up and be like, "I'm a tackling machine." And I'm
yeah.
like, "Yes!" And I'll cheer
Yes, you
quietly,
are.
but I'll be like, "You are."
Yes, that's my son.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that support and scaffolding. I
Mhm.
like how you
Yeah.
phrase it, to give them enough scaffolding
Mhm.
just to feel that.
Mhm.
This topic for me is very close to home, like it is with everyone, but especially just as we're going and as you're talking and, saying all of these very real strategies. And it's just like, I keep thinking, man, I wish back then when I was a kid
Mhm.
growing up in my home, man, I wish that like, why didn't my parents think of that? Like, why did,
Yeah.
but then it
Mhm.
truly like, you go back to what I know, and they didn't have that as a kid. And then
No.
they're, my grandparents didn't
Mhm.
have that as a, and so it was just as truly this like,
Mhm.
this
Ripple
this
effect.
cycle, yeah, this ripple effect. And so I'm just, I'm so grateful for people like you who lead the charge to truly throat punch the mental health crisis. You know, we met through, did we meet through LinkedIn? Is that how we met initially?
Justin Brady came down to do an event, like a branding or a PR event at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and
That's
Justin
right.
came texted me, was like, "You need to be connected with Adam," and I was like, "Okay." Reached
That's
out to you, and I was like,
right.
"Hey, Adam says we need to be connected."
That's right, Justin. So grateful for Justin because when I finally got to meet you in person, when you came to
Mhm.
speak at the EC, kind of felt like I was meeting a famous person, just to be honest, because it was truly like I was, but no, it was just the amount of respect and just like following your work and everything that you're doing. I just feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just in the last month alone, maybe even
Mhm.
weeks alone, you are showing up in Wall Street Journal,
Mhm.
Forbes. I'm missing so many millions of other things. Of
And
course,
that
you
was a
are
big one.
CNN. That's a huge one, and I don't know how many times you've done TEDx speaking
Mhm.
engagements,
Just once.
but
One TEDx.
just once. Speaking engagements in general, you
Mhm.
crush. That's what you do. I'm just so grateful that not only me, but others in this world have somebody like you to lead the charge there because you are just brilliant and you are no BS and you are like, this is it. Let's
Mhm.
do this. You give not only the kiddos, but the adults the scaffolding
Mm.
as well. I think that that's just as important. With that being said, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for
Mhm.
being part of this episode of At the Table. I am just so stoked that I got Dr. Andrea on my episode here. And so, one thing I do like to ask at the end is what is one thing that you're working on right now that's just really exciting to you? And it doesn't even have to be about business.
Yeah, so one thing the number one thing that my husband and I are focusing on, we are actually buying a building because so I've been part of a private practice, the Anxiety Treatment Center of Greater Toledo for the last 4 years, and I've absolutely loved it. They've been fabulous. But I don't know how many people, like, believe in this. I always thought, like, people that did this was kinda, like, weird, but then it happened to me. I remember on December 27th, like, I heard God for the very first time, and he was like, "Bright Spot Families," which is, like, my business, "needs to be a brick and mortar." And I was like, "What?" And so in the next month, probably, my husband and I are buying a building, and Bright Spot Families is going to be a brick and mortar, and we are going to open my own private practice where I and another person, one of my previous students, he's going to come on and he's going to do therapy as well. And then we're going to be offering workshops and parenting classes and like date nights and mom nights and like dad
Oh
nights
my gosh.
and, like, family nights, and it's just going like, I just have so many high hopes for this.
And it's yours. And
And
it
it's
is yours.
mine, and I
That's
envisioned it, like, that
that's
same day,
freaking
like, on
cool.
December 27th, 2024, I heard God, and he was like, "This needs to be a brick and mortar," and then all of a sudden, I was flooded with, like, a three-phase business plan, and so, like, the first one is, like, therapy office, the next one is, like, a family membership program where, like, mom nights, dad nights, couples nights, those kind of things, and then eventually, the 3rd phase is an intergenerational daycare facility. So it's where like older individuals are the main daycare providers for like kids 5 and under.
Wow.
Mhm.
Man, congratulations on that. That is incredible. So, how can people connect with you and where can they find you?
Okay, so I think the biggest one is my website. So Andrea D Mata, MATA.com. You can go there. That's all about my speaking and the workshops and those kind of things. I'm involved on LinkedIn, so come find me on LinkedIn. And then I also have Instagram. It's Dr. DR. So it's DRDREMATA at Instagram. So you can find me. Come find me.
Plenty of places. I will
Mhm.
say that with LinkedIn and the stuff that you write about daily is just nuggets of this and
Mhm.
more. So if anyone out there is on LinkedIn, jumps on LinkedIn for a minute, please search her and at least like hit that bell icon to get those notifications because what you write about is just
Mhm.
wonderful. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this. And I'm so stoked to hear more later and to see if your son is a tackling machine. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Adam. Have a good day.